Are there any big spiritual or religious reflections that you have learned through entrepreneurship?
The biggest thing I've learned through entrepreneurship is just prayer. When you're starting a business, it's really easy to just put all your energy into the business, but I think it's pretty healthy to keep a lot of time for adoration. Try to go to daily mass. That's been big for me. I know what you probably want to do if you're like me is this business is priority number one because once I get all this money, I won't have to worry about the debt, the car, the house, my wife working, blah, blah, blah. But you have to kind of rein yourself back in and make sure that your spiritual life doesn't slack.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Catholic Founders Podcast. Each week, we are breaking down how to fully integrate our Catholic faith into our businesses so that together we can bring the world back to God through our influence and through our success. If you are not already, give us a follow on Instagram and YouTube. We have been pumping out a lot of really good short form content that will help keep you going throughout your week. And if you are looking for a group of other Catholic entrepreneurs to be part of, to converse with, and to just kind of have as a peer group, we do have the Catholic Founders Peer Group, which you can join for $10 a month or $100 a year. To do this, you just go to our Substack and upgrade to a paid subscription. By doing so, you also get access to all of our bonus paid content only. So there's another perk there. All right, today we are speaking with Taylor Ross. He's the founder of Trad Chad, an online dating coaching service for Catholic men to help them find their wives. So very, very specific there, helping Catholic men find their future spouse. And on today's conversation, on our episode, we discuss his journey from being raised by anti-Catholic Baptists to eventually joining the church a couple of years ago. We talk about how he got involved in the dating coaching world and then how that ended up leading him to starting his own business. We talk about the importance of Catholic men being more ambitious and having a growth mindset. It's very similar to kind of how the spiritual life is and to how the saints live their lives. He also shares his framework for how to get started as an internet entrepreneur, and this is explained in terms that are easy to understand even if you are completely unfamiliar with this whole world. He also shares his biggest spiritual lesson that he has learned through being an entrepreneur, something I quite enjoyed hearing about. And then he wraps up with some of the basic tips for any single Catholic men who are looking for their spouse. So if this is why you clicked on this, you can get it by going to the end if you like. But I highly recommend checking out the entire episode, the entire conversation. It's really, really fun to have this conversation with Taylor. So without any further delay, enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the show, Taylor. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Silas?
I am fine as frog here. I'm just enjoying the fact that Wisconsin is finally starting to warm up very slowly.
Yeah, finally. We have days that are 70 and then a day that snows and then we're back to 70. So,
Yeah, at least we got a little bit of a teaser. It's always just enough to keep us hoping that summer will be coming one day, and we know it will because the summers are nice here. Awesome, man. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your business, and then we'll get into more of the details. But just kind of a high level summary of who you are.
yeah, cool. So, I'm a convert from very anti-Catholic Baptist, so I converted like what was that 2 or 3 years ago. And now I'm teaching OCIA. I'm pretty involved. I'm, engaged. So, cool stuff. Cool stuff happening for me faith-wise, and then business-wise, when I converted, my dating life was very, very not good. And so I started, I wanted to get married and have kids. So kind of had my own little dating journey there. And then I figured, hey, maybe my journey can help other people. So I started doing dating coaching, and 2 years later, I've helped 122 guys is now.
Very nice. Yeah, I think just for people for context, I saw one of your ads on Instagram, and I was like, I feel like some people would find this cringe, but I love this. I was like, I need to talk to this guy. So I reached out, and you were like, Hey, is this a scam? Like, is this a pay to play? I was like, No, 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 man, you got a cool thing going. Let's talk. So a couple reasons I think it'd be cool to have you on is it's first of all really awesome to meet people early on in their entrepreneurial journey to see kind of how they got here and what challenges you're facing at this time because they're definitely going to be different a year or two from now. And then also you're a very ambitious person. We spoke and did an intro call, and I wanted to have a chance to hear kind of your ambitions and how they relate to your faith. So let's start by going backwards a bit and just tell us a little bit more about your backstory.
Yeah. So I was raised by an engineer, and my mom, she worked like in customer service a little bit, and then she went, part-time once I was born, and my sister, was born after that. So I was kind of raised to just do the natural career path where you go to college, you get the degree, you clock in for 8 hours a day for 40 years, and then you get to retire. So that's kind of how I was raised, like at least career-wise. By the time I was college age, didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, well, my dad got an industrial engineering degree from MSOE. So if you're in Wisconsin, you know what that is. But for all the people outside. Like I've heard people say MSOE is like the MIT of Wisconsin if you're within a 50-mile radius of MSOE. Otherwise, you've never heard of the school. So Milwaukee School of Engineering. So I was like, yeah, I'll just get an IE degree just like my dad did. Went into $100,000 of student debt, got a really good job coming out of college, but literally within the first year, I was like, man, this sucks. I don't think I'm supposed to be working a 9 to 5. So that's kind of like my career background a little bit.
What about your faith journey? Like you said, you were raised by anti-Catholic Baptists.
Yeah. So we grew up kind of cultural Christian, not going to
Mhm.
church or anything. And then around like 13, 14, my parents decided to try this new church that, they just saw on Capitol Drive or whatever it was. And so we went, and this is like the first church we ever saw that was preaching like heavy conviction, heavily based on the Word of God. Because we used to just go to like a non-denom church twice a year where they never challenge you. They just said, "Oh, God loves you. Don't worry about it." So this was the first time that we actually got like conviction from a pastor on the pulpit, and they also immediately pulled us into like helping with. Like I was doing the sound system, my dad was doing ushering, my mom and sister were in the nursery, so they immediately pulled us into volunteering. And so like I'm 14, we haven't been going to church for literally like a decade, and now we get pulled into this very, very involved, like kind of charismatic pastor, really cool guy. And so we just kind of like all got just sucked into the theology of this church. And unfortunately, if this was like a normal Protestant church, we would have been fine. But this wasn't a normal Protestant church. This was hyper grace, hyper dispensational, rapture any day, young earth creationist. You can only use the KJV Bible. Any other version is, corrupted by Satan. If you use the ESV, it's the especially satanic version. You got to use the KJV. So we were just kind of like cultural Christians until we got sucked up by this super anti-Catholic Baptist church. So I went there for 7 years before my conversion started.
How did your conversion start? I mean, was that like, even though it was, kind of a negative experience, did that actually kind of make you question things deeper and kind of lead to a point of asking more?
No, I actually was hook, line, and sinker. Catholicism is terrible. I don't believe it. They're all going to hell. So what kind of brought me to the faith, it was like a slow and gradual process where I had a theological rap sheet of like 5 to 10 beliefs that were foundational for the church I was attending. And so slowly it kept chipping away, and it was like, inter-Protestant debates were kind of like made me lose faith in this church specifically. And then once I had lost faith in this church, then I was able to look into other Protestant denominations. And so I figured out that young earth creationism, okay, that's not true. KJV only, that's not true. The rapture any day, that's not true. And so I kind of was like, okay, well, I can't keep going to this church. I got to look elsewhere. And so I kept looking elsewhere, kept reading. But then the big ones for me is I was like, I read more and more and more on the New Perspective on Paul, a New Covenant Jew, all that stuff. And I was like, faith alone isn't even true. And so at that point, I was like, there's literally no Protestants I know of in this, country that don't believe faith alone. So I might as well give Catholicism a bit of a peek. And so I looked into it, and it took me like a year, but year and a half, I got convinced of the faith and then converted. Got kicked out of my house, lost all my friends, got dumped by my girlfriend. But, a couple years later, we're living life, we're living the dream.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely consequences to it a lot of times. Oftentimes, I think for most people, it's not so severe. Usually there's not total rejection of your existing friend group, but if they're very strongly anti-Catholic, I guess I guess you got to deal with it, right? So it's really, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's not an easy thing to go through that, no matter what where you are in life. But how was tell us more about the entrepreneurship journey. So you mentioned that you kind of, after conversion, you kind of went through some, I think you said you went through some dating coaches, but just tell me more about that and how it related to your faith and your entrepreneurship journey kind of together, and how you view them.
Yeah. So ultimately, like I would say the root of my entrepreneurship journey is wanting time freedom and financial freedom ultimately for the purpose of having a family, because I'm getting married in June, and I want to have like 6 kids or however much God will give us. And so like undergirding that is like cash, because like my fiance, or my soon to be wife, she can't stay home and take care of the kids and homeschool them and have multiple kids unless I'm making money and I don't have crushing debt, student loans. So for me, I was like, okay, the equation needs to be solved, and you just got to make more income. And unfortunately, like in a 9 to 5 job, your income cannot rapidly increase. That's just not possible unless you get some crazy, like, C executive suite promotion or something. So I've started looking into things, and I found fitness coaching, and I actually tried fitness coaching for like a year roughly. And I actually bought like a mentorship and got certified, like a certified nutrition coach. And I tried it. I was like, hey, this is fun. I'm making some money. I was still doing engineering. Um, it wasn't that fun. I didn't like it that much. And at that point too, my dating life wasn't that good. So I kind of put a pause on that to figure out my dating life. And so I'm like, okay, well, if I want to figure something out, I hire a professor or I hire a coach or I hire a mentor. So if I want to figure dating out, I'm gonna go buy like a digital course or something. So I bought a digital course, and this digital course was like $400, but holy cow, was it amazing! Completely changed my dating life. Gave me kind of the course wasn't meant for Catholic men, so I had to do a lot of extrapolating to make it apply
Hmm.
to my situation. But the bare bones was still pretty good, where it helped me with my photos and my texting, and that at that point, like my online dating, like drastically improved up until the point where I actually, in a year, took me a year, I went out with like 13 or 14 girls. A couple of those were like a month or two, like situationships, and then finally the 13th or 14th, the last girl was, my soon to be wife. Yeah, and at that point, I actually got reached. That course also had a community running side by side, and in that community, I was probably the most active member and like one of the most helpful members in that dating community. And so the guy ran that community reached out to me personally. We got to know each other a little bit over a couple months, and he told me by the end of kind of getting to know each other, hey, dude, I want to go from selling courses to selling high ticket coaching, but I need a client success manager or a head coach to do all the coaching for me. I think you would make the most sense. And so he brought me on. And so I worked as his head coach for about a year and a half.
Hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think that this is a very unique situation. The one thing I wanted to point out is this is something we all have to do, I think, a lot of times is with the secular people, the people who tend to be really on top of their game, if they're doing something, they're teaching in a way that doesn't have a Catholic lens that you look through. So you have to like constantly filter it for our own selves. And this is part of the reason we're doing Catholic Founders is because there's you actually go through the school program with Alex Hermosi, right? Yeah. So he's actually like one of the people I think is like the best example of this, where he's got amazing business advice, right? It's amazing, like really, really, really clear, great frameworks. But we need to like apply this Catholic lens to how we look at it, right? In many cases. So I think it's definitely a playbook that many of us can run. But tell us more then again how you decided from working with him to then go start your own. What was the journey like? Do you still work somewhere else in another job? Like was this full hog? You just decided to full send? Like how did that go?
So I worked for him for like a year and a half. And at the beginning of it, I was like, wow, this is so fun. I was taking like 4 to 5 hours of calls like every day after I'd get home from my job, work 8 hours, then come home, work another 5 hours just taking coaching calls. And it was really, really fun. But after, a year, you start to realize like I started to see what their top line revenue was and how much I was making. And he brought me on as kind of like I was technically an employee, but I feel like I was also a big founder of that business. I mean, he's a great guy. The business is amazing. From like if I'm a non-Catholic person, kind of looking into it, but like I helped him build out all the systems. Like I made all the coaching curriculum. I kind of took the course material, my own personal experience, and made like a new coaching program or curriculum for these high ticket clients. I developed because this is an online dating offer, I developed a kind of like a method for finding photographers and then training them up on how to take dating photos. Because I would basically have like, if we have a client globally, like internationally, they come to us, we can literally tell them, we have a photographer who's trained on our process local to you that can do your photo shoot. So over a year and a half, I sourced and trained 44 dating photographers internationally. So like we got them in Rome, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States, like Mexico, Colombia, everywhere. We have photographers everywhere. And so I just started to realize like I built these really, really cool systems. And we were doing like 100K a month, and I was the only one doing fulfillment. So like 20 clients onboarded every month, and I'm doing 100% of the fulfillment. And so for me, I was like, holy cow, I can fulfill this all myself. I'm the one. He's doing the marketing and stuff, and he's like the key person. He's the talking head in all the marketing and the ads and the videos. But I'm the one actually doing all the coaching, all the sourcing, all the curriculum. Why don't I just start my own thing? So parallel to that, I started my own thing in the background, and I started, I was using the same photographers. I recreated my own course with kind of a Catholic spin specifically for, virtuous dating essentially. And I basically got to a point where the money that I was making with my business, Trad Chad, pretty much like 10x the money I was making with this other company because they're paying me like for hours, just like, an $80 an hour or something. And then I go to this thing, and like if I did the math, I'm making like 500 an hour if I do
Yeah.
the calculations.
Yeah. This journey is one that's pretty common in terms of like just kind of finding that exit strategy. But I also want to go back to something you mentioned about just doing the math, right? Like, hey, listen, I'm gonna have I'm hopefully, God willing, gonna have a big family. I need to be able to provide for it, right? I don't live in, I mean, you live in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's not the most expensive place, but you still live in a city. You live in Milwaukee. You don't live in like the middle of nowhere, Kansas or something, right? No offense to people who live in Kansas, but you just did the math, right? And I think this is something that on one hand, you have a lot of pretty holy, pious men who they just don't seem to think about this, the finance side of things. They're like, hey, God will take care of it. And on one hand, that's definitely respectable, but I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that? Just kind of being like, hey, all going to be fine. I'm not going to worry about finances. It'll work out. Versus like, here's my plan to achieve that. Do you have any thoughts on this when you see this? Because I'm assuming you see it to an extent with the guys you work with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great observation because a lot of guys that I talk to, when I'm like trying to see if they'd make a good fit for my program, I'm always wanting guys who are financially set because number one, that means they can afford my program. Number two, that means they can actually afford what my program gets them, which is a serious relationship turning into a wife. So I feel like that's really important. And guys, I used to just kind of put my head in the sand and I'm like, oh, well, I have a salary. Like, that's so awesome. I don't need to worry about it. Once I did the math, like I love Dave Ramsey. So I was like watching the Dave Ramsey stuff and I started to do the math and I'm like, man, like 60% of my take home pay is getting eaten by expenses. That's horrible. And I have this $100,000 debt looming over my head for my student loans. Like something's got to give. Because ultimately, the drive for me was just like, I want to be debt free. I want to be able to replace my fiance's income so she doesn't have to work. And that ultimately just meant like, yeah, you got to increase your income, buddy. Because the only problem is I feel like most Catholic guys, they just accept the status quo. They're just like, well, I'm going to be working this 9 to 5 for 40 years. Well, my wife has to work no matter what, so we're just going to deal with that. Well, we have to finance the car, the boat, whatever. We got to finance it, so we're always going to have debt. And I just think I want to challenge guys to not like fall into the status quo. You don't have to work a 9 to 5. You don't have to go into debt for literally everything. Your wife doesn't have to work if she doesn't want to. You don't have to do that. But that means you got to actually increase your income. And unfortunately, most guys are just, like I said, just don't want to think about it.
If a lot of I have encountered this a lot, and just in the people I've bumped into, and it seems as though they don't have. I feel like you and I, we could consider ourselves internet native, right? So we're like, finding a way to make money on the internet is not that hard to do, right? To us, but to some people it is. So what would you tell those people who do not know anything? Where should they get started? Any like kind of basic ideas? Because you mentioned earlier that you had this mentality of hiring coaches for things that you didn't know. So just talk about that part from going from literally knowing nothing, where to begin, where do they start?
Yeah. So if I could do it all over again, like where would someone start? Number one, even I think it's always smart to have kind of something you're doing as the main thing. So like an engineering job is the main thing just to keep the lights on while you get kind of an online thing or a business or maybe a brick and mortar location, whatever it looks like up and running. But I would just say like don't get into debt. Don't do it. Like really at as much as you can minimize debt. Like if I could do it all over again instead of going to like a really expensive engineering school for all 4 years, I would have tried to go to like a community college for 2 years, get all my gen eds, then go to the expensive engineering school for 2 years and like cut my loans in half, or maybe just go to like I don't know Platteville. It's like a really really cheap engineering school, like 2 hours from where I lived, but really really nice school. So yeah, no debt. Keep the risk as low as possible because if you want to increase your income, you're gonna fail, and so it's nice if you don't have that much risk. Because for me, it's like I had like $1,000 in loan payments every month. It's like if my business idea fails, I'm missing rent, I'm missing my loan, and who knows if I'll be eating then. So yeah, definitely minimize risk, and then it's funny because I would listen to these entrepreneur guys before I started my business. I would be like, oh, this advice is so dumb. It's so vague, but like, I'm going to give the same advice because it's 100% true. You have to find a skill that is really, really valuable and then just sell it to people online. And so you could go two routes. you could work for someone else's business. And I think it's a great way to start because there's a couple ways. Like you could, number one, find a program that helps you fix your problem and then just try to be as active and helpful in that program, in that community. Talk to your coach, get to know your coach, build a relationship with your coach. And at that point, you could go into like a jobs you could go into. You could become a closer for that company. You could become a DM setter for that company. You could become a client success manager or a coach, not even head coach, but just a coach for that company. There's a lot of things that you could do, like literally just buying a coaching program and getting super involved. That could potentially turn into a career option for you. And another thing too is you could also just buy a course that teaches you how to be a setter, how to be a closer, and then just try and, DM people on Instagram and just say, hey, do you need a setter? Do you need a closer? And kind of go that way. So yeah, you could work for someone else's business. You could also just start your own business. And it's as simple as find a transformation in your life that was, really helpful, you're really passionate about, and just help other people do that exact same transformation. And then the third option is you could just, find some sort of transformation that you're not that passionate about, but would make you good money. So like, I don't know if you know who Charlie Morgan is, but I think his first business was like appointment setting for like a gym. But he didn't own his own gym. He wasn't super passionate about appointment setting for a gym, but he was just like, hey, this is going to make me money. So I'm going to start an agency for like physical gym locations.
Hey there, quick interruption. If you're growing your business and looking for support for administrative tasks or maybe online marketing items, have you considered using Paraclete VA? This is a service that my executive assistant and I are building. In essence, we're helping two people. We're helping Catholic entrepreneurs hire executive assistants so that they can grow their businesses. And we help Catholic virtual assistants in the Philippines to find better employment with Catholics. Our focus is really on helping these Catholics to find better employers because if you know much about this industry, you know that they are often really mistreated by their employers or the businesses that they work in are not really aligned with their Catholic morals. But quitting isn't really an option because they have families to feed. So if you'd like to help grow your business, if you'd like help growing your business, and you want to help a family in need to find better employment today, reach out to us at dearcfpod@gmail.com with a little bit about what you're looking for, and we will introduce you today to a handful of people. If you end up hiring somebody, you pay $500, and then you pay $500 if you're still happy with them 30 days after they've been hired. Please do note that we are not an employer of record. We do not employ them directly. You will pay them. We will help facilitate that for you, but you will be the one working directly with them and paying them. All right, back to the show. Yeah, to me, what pops out the most about all of this is there has to be initiative at the bare minimum, right? You can't start to see things in this way if you don't have that initial interest and initiative like you have. But there's so many ways, like you said, you can make money on the side, whether it's as just like a side job that helps you learn a new skill versus if your day job is you're working on some kind of factory line. The 0 to 1 to start a factory is pretty rough, but the 0 to 1 to start, an online coaching business or something, that's not that rough, right? You hypothetically could have zero experience and still make sales if you know how to sell, right? So, that's what, to me, my journey all started with like my godfather convincing me, regardless of what you want to do in terms of business, you got to learn how to sell. So you might as well come work for me and learn how to sell. So, no, I really appreciate that perspective. And one more thing I'd like to just maybe like double click into is after you became Catholic and you obviously you already kind of were on this entrepreneurial journey to an extent. Did you find a lot of people like you? Like, did you find a peer group? I mean, I know you're in a city that's got a lot of Catholics there. So did you find a lot of people like that, or was it sometimes just like knocking on a brick wall?
I had good Catholic friends, but like when I brought up my business, they would always just say, well, that's too risky. Just go buy real estate. Don't quit your day job. You'll never make that, you'll never make money. You're charging how much? No one's going to buy that. Unfortunately, a lot of really cool Catholic dudes, super masculine, agree with their politics, their religion and all that fun stuff. But when it comes to business, they just have that boomer mindset where you just got to punch the clock. It's not going to work. Your program's too expensive. No one's going to buy it. Just go get into real estate. So it was kind of like hitting a brick wall because a lot of guys don't think about it.
So, I mean, maybe it's just built in for us. Like, did you have any arguments to them about like from scripture or from the faith? They say, hey, listen, the apostles did these crazy things. Like did you ever have those moments where you were just like, whatever, guys, I'm just going to go keep doing my thing?
I didn't. So I'm not super pious. Maybe I should have argued from scripture, but I just was like, using logic. I was like, well, if my coaching program is, X amount of dollars and my close rate is X%, that means that to make what I want to make, I just have to book, 30 sales calls a month or something. really easy math. And I know other people are doing it, so I can do it too. And it was pretty much that simple. It's
Basic
just an
logic.
equation. How many appointments are you setting? How many of those appointments show up? How many of them do you convince to buy a program? It's that simple. And it's just, input is appointments or sales calls, output is revenue. So like for me, it was like my brain, if my brain can comprehend it and it does not break the laws of physics, I can do it guaranteed.
No, I think this is how most people should approach it, and it's oftentimes very difficult to do so if that's not the influence you had, right? I guess I try to make this argument. I'm always trying to figure out how to actually grab the exact lines of scripture that will help me convince more people to become entrepreneurs. But I do think that just look at the saints in general. Like they did things that seemed crazy, that seemed like you should never do this. I think Saint Joseph is a great example. A lot of us men, even if we're not entrepreneurs, look up Saint Joseph because of his just trust in God. And the angel shows up in the middle of the night and says, "Hey, you got to go to Egypt." He literally gets up and leaves, no consideration. He's not like, "Oh, that's too risky." He just goes, right? And I think that to an extent, that's what we have to do as entrepreneurs, because if God is calling us, why should we be worried, right? God will take care of us if he's calling us, right? And this is just that comes down to the fact of learning how to understand what we're called to, but that's another discussion. So I guess before we go to other topics, I do want to ask you, so where are you now with your business, and where do you want to take it to, and why do you want to take it there?
So I'm part time. So I work engineering during the day, and then I work on this business kind of like in my free time after after the workday is done. And my goal is to take Trad Chad, frankly, to the moon. I want it to be $1 million a year company, and I know for a fact I can do it. I actually have a friend who's doing something very similar. He's a fitness coach for Catholic men, and he's basically there. And so I'm like, okay, if you can do fitness coaching for only Catholics, dating is a much higher on the hierarchy of needs for Catholic dudes. So I guarantee I can get there. And at that point, I'll be full time. And then kind of more long term, like I just want to keep going, going, going because that income will take care of. I've always said like I wanna have a lake house, drop my kids off at soccer practice in a Lambo. Like, obviously, that's not that important. What's more important is my wife doesn't work.
You're not going
She
to
can
fit all your kids in a
homeschool.
Lambo, by the way.
Yeah, I'll buy multiple and like yeah, they'll just be
Just
connected
pull them
together.
in a trailer.
Yeah, pull them in a trailer. But yeah, I want to go full time because number one, it's just so 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 fun. Like doing this dating coaching is super super fun. Another thing too is like I'm about to get married. I haven't been in the dating market for like years, but I get to like vicariously. It just feels so good when a guy like swallows his fear and gives me multiple thousands of dollars on a sales call, and then 2 months later he's sending me a picture of this gorgeous girl that he's in a relationship with, and I helped him the whole way, like what to text, planning the dates, what to wear, what photos to use. It just feels so good. And of course, revenue will make all those other dreams,
Yeah.
dreams come true.
Yeah, I mean, it's also very good because there is a whole. I mean, I don't really want to go into this topic too much today, but there is a huge issue in America with the lack of. It's very difficult for guys to find spouses. It just seems like, especially Catholic guys. Like we talked about this a little bit, like kind of a lack of ambition, not knowing how to raise them up a little bit. No, nothing there. So I experienced this with some of the people I encountered in my trad days in New York. That was fun times. But no, I appreciate you sharing that vision. I think this is something I want to normalize more with Catholics being ambitious and being entrepreneurial. I forget who it was that I was talking to recently was saying that sometimes you just need to recognize that God put you in this situation with these ambitions, with these skill sets, with these dreams for a reason, right? I shouldn't say sometimes. He always has, right? So if you're in this seat as the leader of this business, and hopefully someday you'll have employees, so you don't have to do all the fulfillment yourself too. You're leading these people, and God put you in these positions. He's put other people in leadership positions in the past, and we just need to embrace that. It's not wrong to embrace this idea of leadership and being ambitious, because if you look at it, all of the saints were ambitious, maybe not necessarily from a financial perspective, but they were all ambitious for God. So I just want to, for anybody listening, that's what I want to get them to at least reflect on for a bit, over your morning coffee. Let's talk about this. Have learned something. So this is kind of a core principle of online businesses, is making offers. And if you're working through the school program with Alex Hormozy, I'm assuming you've learned a lot there. So can you share some of your big tips on how to make offers?
Yeah. So the offer, I mean, it's as simple as like I help, like this is the offer. This is the bare bones. I help blank to achieve blank. That's it. And you have to figure out the who and you have to figure out the what. And so for me, it's I help Catholic men meet their wife. And so you ultimately have to figure out like what problem do you want to solve and what person do you want to solve it for. That's one issue that I had when I was doing my fitness coaching. I was like, I want to help people get in better shape. But my clientele then was like all over. Like I'd get like a single mom who's 300 pounds struggling with that, and then I get someone who's like 120-pound dude who's 5'10" and needs to gain weight, and I was just like all over the place. And so when I kind of moved on to dating, I defined exactly who, which is, if I wanted to be super specific, it's conservative Catholic men who are 24 to 37 ready to get married but don't have a dating life. Like that's how specific I wanted to get it. And then the problem is obviously helping them find their wife. Because even if you have like a general problem, like lose weight, if you make your target audience more like specific, all of a sudden now you're above the competition. Because instead of being like, hey, I help men lose weight, you're like, hey, I help Catholic fathers lose weight so they can take care of their family. Like that is a much more enticing offer. And so just bare bones offer, that would be my advice. You got to find a person, and you should like know this person better than they know themselves. It usually helps if this person is you in your past. And that's how it was for me too, because it was a dating offer. And so I was thinking of myself when I was having these dating issues. And then just fix the problem.
No, this is very good advice. I think that just the idea of making something specific is something that I would say I call them baby entrepreneurs usually struggle with. So if somebody is struggling with this, I highly, highly recommend reading the book $100 Million Offers. It's probably it's the book I recommend most to entrepreneurs, that's for sure. So that's a good one. Now, something that you are going through right now, you're obviously still working, but you're starting your own business on the side and you're getting married. A lot of people, I started my business when I had just gotten married and we were expecting our first child. And I was like, this is like kind of risky, but I still decided to make the leap. So can you talk about that experience? Kind of how do you feel about starting your own business or going into this while you're about to get married? And then just like any of the hesitations that you have.
Yeah, the first hesitation is it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time away from, wedding planning, looking for a house to buy, and, all of that stuff. So definitely some hesitations there. So part of that is just kind of like, obviously optimizing the schedule, being aware that it's going to take time. And then another part too is like I actually did kind of a revamp of my offer to basically take, I made my offer go from 6 months to 3 months of coaching, and then made the offer way less fulfillment intensive on me. So guys still get the same results, but it's a lot more self-led rather than me like getting on a call with them once or twice a week. But yeah, so the time thing is kind of a hesitation. Then another thing is the money hesitation, because I get all my traffic through paid ads. And so you're always kind of like, oh, I don't want to burn money on ads, because everyone's done it. They've tried a funnel, they spent $1,000 on it, and they got nothing. And they're like, oh, well, that really sucked. So that's a big thing for me, though. Big thing for me is like, I only pay for my ads in cash now. Like that's kind of something that it helps me to keep myself honest, and basically like it helps keep me honest, and I make better ads. I do better, DM setting, and I do better closing when I know I can only spend cash on my ads. So that's been huge. It's kind of like the transition period. I haven't transitioned yet, so I'm still working the engineering job. And the main reason is just like I still got some tailing loans that I got to take care of. And also, this is a big warning. I did like some really crazy numbers like 2 months in a row. So I was like, oh, I'm a big dog now. I'm going to go buy a really expensive coaching program, to take me to that next level. And then I had like a 0 month because my setter quit, my ad account got banned, and like all this crazy stuff happened. All of a sudden I have zero revenue for 2 months, and now I'm in credit card debt. So that's like another thing. I'm almost done with that too, but that's another thing where it's like, hey, please do not, like, if anyone takes one thing away and only one thing away from this interview, it's like, do not overextend yourself on credit card debt, student loans, car payment, like, because what's going to happen is it's going to bite you in the butt when you inevitably, get laid off or have no revenue or lose your ad account. So
Now, this is
once those,
that's a really solid piece of advice, man, because there's a lot of people who um they approach entrepreneurship as like, oh, I got this invention or something, and they're gonna like, oh, I'm gonna mortgage my house or whatever. You see the kind of crazy entrepreneur kind of stereotype that you see in TV shows and stuff. That's not what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to do these things responsibly as Catholics. Like we can take the steps and be persevering to build side businesses, right? Until they're to a point where they can take over. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be venture capital backed, blow the money, throw it against the wall and see how it sticks. It can be slow and steady because we have the virtue and the patience to do it, or we should at least, right? Not everybody does, but I hope that people do. Are there any big spiritual reflections that you have from doing this kind of like as an entrepreneur? Has God like taught you any other things specifically on relying on him? Just any particular kind of spiritual or religious reflections that you have learned specifically through entrepreneurship?
One of the most I learned about the patron saint of entrepreneurs, which is, I think his name is Saint Homo Bonus. I think that's
Saint
his name.
Homobonus, yeah.
Homo
Yeah.
Bonus, yeah. So that was cool. So, having a new patron saint. But yeah, I mean, it's going to sound so stupid, but the biggest thing I've learned through entrepreneurship is just prayer. Because it's like I was praying last night, like, help. I got one guy who's got a couple struggles with his dating life that I'm helping. And it's just simple as like, help me find the leads. Help me, I want these guys to meet their wife. I don't even like that's part of it too. It's like I just want guys to get married. Them paying me money is obviously a bonus, but like even if it's something I would even do for free. But yeah, it's just like prayer. Prayer is so important for me. And also like when you're starting a business, it's really easy to just put all your energy into the business, but I think it's pretty healthy to keep a keep a lot of time for adoration. Try to go to daily mass. That's been big for me. Try to go to confession, obviously when you need to, but also like if you go, there was a pope who's canonized and he went to confession weekly. And so even if you're a saint, you can go to confession weekly. So basically not letting I know what you probably want to do, like if you were like me, is like this business is priority number one because once I get all this money, I won't have to worry about the debt, the car, the house, my wife working, blah blah blah. But it's like you have to kind of rein yourself back in and make sure that your spiritual life doesn't slack.
No, this is a very clippable moment, man. This is good. I think this is a big struggle I have too. Is it's so easy to be like, oh, yeah, I just got to keep grinding it out until I literally can't stay awake, and then I, go to bed and I forget to do my exam, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the next day, like, it just starts to compound, right? Like if you start to fall away from your prayer schedule, or you're like, oh no, I'm just too busy, I got to take this meeting today instead of going to daily mass, it really catches up with you at some point, right? And I think that for me personally, it's been, I live in a world where my clients are not recurring typically. I mean, a little bit, but it's not like some kind of software company. And you gotta wait. You gotta rely on the fact that there's gonna be something else that comes in the door, because you can't always guarantee that somebody needs your services right now, or figure out who that person is. And I just try to keep close to St. Joseph, and the prayer thing for me has been big. It's also accepting the fact that, hey, there might be slow times. It's not going to always be a straight line to the sky. That's been pretty tough for me. I don't know if you have any experiences like that.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of what I've said. Keep the risk low because when you have the low times, if you have low risk, you don't have a ton of risk. It's not going to bite you that bad. But yeah, prayer and adoration are huge.
That low risk point, I think, is a really interesting to maybe reflect on more. Is that a lot of businesses that end up hitting really rough times or struggles, it's often because they overextended themselves, and then as a result, it's basically running your business in an irresponsible way, which then puts your employees at risk, right? And if you're doing that, if you're the leader of the business, you have a responsibility to your employees, because they've got families, right? They're choosing to be an employee rather than start their own thing. So you need to be responsible for them, grow in a good way. Are there any core lessons outside of the dating side of things that you would offer to men, to Catholic men, that you say, hey, here's some core things that you guys should definitely keep in mind, not specifically related to the dating side of things?
I'd say the most important thing is just to have a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. Because a lot of these guys have probably heard this before, but a fixed mindset is like, I have these skills, I have this background, I have these statistics, I cannot change. But the growth mindset is if there's a will, there's a way, I can totally do it. And so for me, that has helped me so much, the growth mindset, because it's like, hey, I wasn't in shape. Am I just always going to be out of shape or can I get in shape? Yeah, I can get in shape. And so I figured it out. The dating life, am I always going to be single? No, there's a way to figure this out. So I went and figured it out. Hey, starting my own business, is there a way to do that? Yeah, so I went and figured it out. Got the LLC, got, the credit card, the banking account, blah, blah, blah. Hey, is there a way to market and get appointments? Yeah, went and figured it. Sales? Yeah, went and figured it out. Photography for date. So it's just like a growth mindset is so, so, so key because if you're stuck with this mindset of it just kind of is what, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, it is what it is, can't really change it, it's not true, you definitely can change it. And ultimately, you could say that there's a spiritual dimension there because, with Satan, the father of lies, saying you can't change, usually that's said about our sin, but it could also be said of like just our life experiences that aren't necessarily morally bad, but do not kind of serve our higher purpose.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, that's a perfect kind of way to close that out because it is this growth mindset is the spiritual life, right? We're trying to constantly grow. I forget what essay it was or poem or something in school, but there was this, this specific type of animal that builds like a small hut, and then as it grows, it keeps like building a bigger, like some kind of sea animal. Don't ask me exactly what it was, but it was this poem about the spiritual life that we constantly outgrow the past, and we have to keep going. And it's the same thing for our I don't see why it wouldn't be the same thing for our professional lives as well, right? Secular people know that already intuitively, and that's what they focus on, but Catholics oftentimes miss the point there. So we talked about community slightly earlier, but just out of curiosity, something I've struggled with is always finding other Catholic entrepreneurs who are, young and ambitious like us. How do you find that in Milwaukee specifically? Are there any kind of tips you have for that?
Yeah, so this is the this is a problem I haven't cracked. Like
Okay.
in person, not really happening, but online, I do think it definitely. Like I actually have several Catholic, entrepreneurs and stuff. Like I've been getting interviewed on other guys' channels. They're Catholic entrepreneurs I talk to. So it's like in person is pretty rough because you can't just go to a Bible study and then some of these guys I talk to, they're doing like 100K and they're a Catholic dude doing 100K per month, and it's like, wow, that's super cool. It's like I'm not going to go to a Bible study and find a guy like that, most likely.
Most
So
likely.
yeah, so in
We got to
person,
change that though. We got to change that.
yeah, we do need to change that. But like for me personally, like literally just getting a good social media following to where I don't seem like a nobody, and then literally just I've had people like just watch. I run ads, so I've had big accounts that are Catholic see my ads. Well, I like you too. They see my ad, they're like, "Wow, this guy seems cool." They follow me. I DM them. We start talking. We get to know each other a little bit. Maybe they'll have me on their show, stuff like that. So I've done that, quite a few times now, and I do have some pretty solid connections. I wish they were in person, but online is better than nothing.
Yeah, no, that's how I feel about it too. It's much easier to find the similar people no matter where you are in the world and what your interests are online. So, now I hope that there's maybe this is something I got to work on in the future is helping build these in-person communities. But let's kind of wrap things up here with anything that you're willing to share for free for men who are looking to find a spouse. Any kind of core dating tips and then an offer for them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd ultimately say finding your wife, you can just break it down into 4 steps. And of course, I can make it bare bones, numbers, formulas. Of course, it's not that simple. There's a spiritual aspect, there's a personal aspect, there's, a humility aspect. But if I had to just, with no caveating, 4 things you have to do. Top of funnel, you know, you have to be meeting women and meeting a pretty decent number of women. Because if you want to meet your wife and you think that you're a picky guy, that means you can't just, marry the first woman you meet. You got to be meeting a lot of women. So that's top of funnel. Second part of the funnel is getting their number. And there's going to be a conversion there because not all the women you meet are going to be, you're not going to be interested in. But then the women that you are interested in, you're not going to be able to get all their numbers. So there's going to be a conversion rate going from the women you meet to the numbers that you get. And so, number one, are you meeting enough women? If not, you need to fix that. Number two, how is your conversion rate getting from an interested, you meet a girl that's interested to getting her phone number? That's a conversion rate. If that's really bad, you need to think about it. Then, from getting this girl's phone number, you got to actually like get her on date. So texting her to set up the date, going on a date with her, that's kind of the next thing you need to do. And if you get these girls' numbers but they just ghost you, you can never actually get them to show up on a date with you, that's the thing that you need to fix. And then last but not least is, okay, now that you're meeting women, that's not a problem anymore. You're getting numbers, that's not a problem anymore. You're going on dates, that's not a problem anymore. Last step is actually going from date to dating to proposing to marriage. And so how would that look for you? Are you able to do that with women that you think are wife quality, or do they just kind of disappear on you and you can never get to that relationship stage? That's ultimately the 4 things that you need to do to find your wife. And yeah, if you want to do that yourself, go figure it out. If you would like to have it all done with you and for you in 3 months, then obviously you can check out my stuff. But yeah,
Where can people find you specifically?
you can find me on Instagram at Real Trad Chad and then on YouTube at Real Trad Chad.
Nice, very nice. Well, I think this is really good. It's a very simple thing, framework, but if you view it as a funnel, right? It's like, okay, where's the bottleneck? And basically, the bottleneck indicates where's my skills gap, right? And then we just got to work on it. So this has been really fun, man. I really enjoyed having you on. I'm looking forward to seeing how your business grows. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Catholic Founders. If you enjoyed it, leave us 5 stars on your favorite podcast player. If you're not familiar why this is important, it helps us to get ranked higher in the discovery mode so other people can find that podcast. And if you're not already, give us a follow on YouTube to help us get up to 1,000 subscribers. Once we get over this number, we can actually start being monetized as well. And finally, if you are looking for a group of other Catholic entrepreneurs to be able to discuss how your challenges of your business, how to run your business, advice, etc., a lot of things, behind doors that you don't really hear on the podcast, consider joining our Catholic Founders peer group. It's $10 a month or $100 a year. And all you have to do is just go to our Substack and upgrade to paid. So that's CatholicFounders.com /subscribe, and then just choose the paid tier that works best for you. We do have a higher tier if you'd like to be a bigger financial supporter of the show as well. But to get access to the peer group, you just need to sign up for the $10 a month or $100 a year tier. And you also get access to all of the paywalled content as well. So that's another benefit of it. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you, and we will see you next time on Catholic Founders.